Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I think you can see the screen behind us, but just to make sure we're in the best, Freudian slip, we're in the right place. We're on a panel here to have a conversation about decarbonizing the built environment. Just very quickly, I think in a moment we're going to get to look at a short video to really warm up the topic before we get into the conversation with the panel here. But the lights are a bit bright, but just by brief show of hands, hands up if you feel deep down you really know how to decarbonize the built environment. Just real quick. No one's watching. Okay. And now hands up. I know we just met, but hands up if you really don't know what this means to decarbonize the built environment. Don't be ashamed. Okay. It can be a confusing topic. So I believe we do have a short video presentation. I would love our great hosts to see if they can put it up, and then we'll get into a bit of discussion. Right.
The built environment contributes 40% of all the carbon emissions on the planet. And in order to reduce those emissions, we need to address those big consumers. The first place to start is within buildings and the mechanical and electrical systems, because you can move the needle. You can definitely move the needle by putting those systems in that are more efficient and more productive and more clean and renewable.
As a legion of companies, we have the ability to pull in all of our resources across the country to accelerate the process of getting a customer's needs taken care of. So I can reach out to CMTA if I have an engineering resource, to ICS if I've got program management issues or needs, or to Black Bear if I've got a client that's looking to add solar to their programs.
We're making buildings better, and better is defined by more efficient and more healthy and more resilient. And there's a side benefit to those three things, and that side benefit is cost reduction, a positive impact on climate change, and a positive impact on the productivity of the people in these facilities and the machinery in these facilities. By us making these systems work at optimum efficiency, there's a tremendous win-win-win when done properly.
And the future is really bright when we look at what we can do, how we can impact our customers, our employees, the end users, and ultimately the environment in doing so.
We are in an amazing position to have impact at scale, whether it's designing systems, implementing renewables, figuring out creative financing solutions. Those make a difference to our clients and our clients' buildings. Given our strength and given our reach, we can make a real live impact on decarbonization in what is a critical time for us from a business perspective and from a climate change perspective.
Together, we are Legence.
All right, terrific. So we're very thrilled to have not only Legence, but some of their partner companies here with us on stage. These are experts in decarbonization in the building sector. And I'll allow them to introduce themselves, but I'll first just ask you each to just address a very simple question. And just please give us a bit about who you are and what you do at your own organization as you lead into it. Why do your clients want to do this? Why do they want to decarbonize? And we're going to get into what that means, but I'll ask you to go ahead and kick it off, Arif.
Again, it's Arif Qureshi. I'm with Legence. I'm the Chief Growth Officer, and excited to be here and talk to you about decarbonizing the built environment. Why do customers want to do this? Again, the interesting thing is not as simple as multiple reasons. I think what we're finding out is, clearly there's some legislation, there's code changes that drives some of the issues that they have to deal with. But at the same time, there's some business needs around that, right? There's a profitability issue that's directly tied in a lot of cases to decarbonizing these buildings, because you can actually end up reducing the cost of operations, which is important. But there's a side benefit, because you can also impact the indoor environment, you can also impact the productivity of the people too. So there's a lot of things that are positive that are driving, I think, this need to be able to decarbonize buildings. It's a complex issue though, as we talk about it, and I'll let some of the other panels here talk about it too, because it's not as simple in terms of kind of get this, because there's major challenges around this, right? And one of the biggest challenges, we'll talk more about this, is how do you fund and finance these type of solutions?
Okay. Erin, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Erin Richmond. I'm the Executive Vice President of RETEC Advisors. We work at the intersection of buildings and real estate and sustainability. I think building on what Arif is saying, I think our clients understand the importance of decarbonizing buildings with both the environmental impact that can have, and the impact that they can have considering the size of their portfolios, but also that it's a financial responsibility of theirs as well, and it has, sustainability has an impact on the bottom line.
Yeah, my name is Natalie Kierzanowski. I'm a senior associate with Black Bear Energy. Black Bear Energy is the leading owner's representative for on-site renewables for the commercial real estate space. Our clients usually come to us with two goals. Those are usually both environmental and economic. So our clients come to us knowing they want to add solar, they want to decarbonize their portfolios, but they also want to know if they can add additional operating income to all of their assets by doing so. So with every single Black Bear project, we're not only decarbonizing a single site, but we're also adding additional income to every asset, whether by reducing energy costs or by adding rooftop rent to every single site. So there's a variety of reasons, but for us, it's usually a combination of economic and environmental that we always help to prioritize.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, I'm going to pick on the word decarbonization just for a little bit. My name is Marcus Extavor. I work at a group called Time CO2. We're the climate action platform of time, and we think carefully about how to really use journalism and other media platforms to really help explain, especially to a business audience, what this is all about. We find that there's a lot of jargon, a lot of confusing words. Decarbonization is one of them, but they don't always align with familiar phrases from business. So along that line, I think it's probably clear to you, or you might guess, but maybe not, that decarbonization is primarily about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So for the panel, I would love for you to just help us make sure we're on the same page. Give us some examples of sources of greenhouse gas emissions from buildings or the built environment.
Sure. One of the key things, right, in most buildings is what is the fuel source in terms of what you're using. So a lot of times the fuel sources are a concern. These are fossil fuels that are running your systems that are creating a lot of carbon into the environment. That's a big issue. So your boiler systems, your chiller systems, your heating and cooling systems have a big impact on that. We focus on the fact that there is two components to being able to reduce that impact. One is on the demand side. What can we do to really reduce the demand for energy usage, right? And there's multiple technologies available to be able to do that, and they're getting more and more cost effective. I think one of the biggest things we're seeing now in terms of innovation is it is actually cost effective to be able to do these things. But I think it's really important for building owners and managers to understand that you don't need to do everything, right? We really talk about kind of stackable solutions, right? We look at the fact that you need to do simple things first that have a big impact, and then you can move into the more expensive, more cost-effective, costly things that you need to work with, right? That's how you really need to do it. That's the demand side of it. In terms of supply side, and let some of the others talk about that, what do you do with the supply side? How do you make sure that we're using clean energy to also reduce the emissions in the environment?
Well, let me just dig into energy a little bit, because I think when a lot of people think about reducing greenhouse gases, and certainly in climate change conversations, we usually go straight to energy and then the energy system, which means we yell at the fossil fuel companies, and then sometimes we'll yell at the utilities, the electric utilities. Should we think about this as just their responsibility? Like, why are we even talking about energy sources in the built environment? Maybe I'll ask you to start on this one, Natalie.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think it's the real estate industry responsibility as well. When we look across our portfolio, there are very few sites that we see that we really can't add solar to in some way. There's obviously obstacles to doing so. One of the main ones for us is financing. Obviously, it's very expensive to add commercial and industrial solar. You're usually looking in the 6 to 7 figure range per site. But there's so many options now, especially with the IRA. If you think about third-party ownership for solar as well, if you're not in the space to be able to invest and deploy capital, there's always third-party solar developers that are going to be able to do that on your site for you. So I think we absolutely agree. It's definitely the responsibility of real estate owners to kind of go down that path, and especially given how easy financing has become, we're hoping more do so.
Yeah. And I think just to follow up on that, right? I mean, use an example, not just about solar, but geothermal, right? We just installed one of the largest geothermal facilities for the Louisville airport, right? So that's the other approach, is that we were able to demonstrate that financially it made a lot of sense to be able to do it. And the payback was relatively fast. So again, we talk about the fact that a lot of these solutions have to have a business reason for doing it, but there's also, of course, an environmental benefit. So you have to look at both of those components. This is the largest geothermal installation at the airport in the US so far, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. The other piece of this we're seeing some impact on is, of course, you talked about IRA. That is having an impact. Some of these projects are getting almost 40% of that paid for through those tax credits. That's a big deal, and that's not just in the private sector. One of the biggest changes that happened with this legislation was the fact that even in the public sector, you can get direct pay. Remember, most public sector are not a tax-paying entity, so they were unable to take advantage of these kind of tax credits in the past. But today, with the fact that we're able to get direct pay, that is going to change the game for public facilities. Now remember, there's a lot of public facilities in the US. You look at schools and universities and cities and counties and federal government, we're going to see a big impact as we move forward. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Legislation at times plays a key role, but as does the right funding models.
Okay, I definitely want to get into the IRA a little bit more, but before we do, Aaron, is there anything you would add to the picture of energy use in the built environment? Whose responsibility is it? How should we think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Natalie started off well. Like, owners have the opportunity to change the fuel sources that they're using, right? So it's not always what you're relying on in the grid. They also have the opportunity to create demand more for change on the grid. But also they have a lot of opportunity to just reduce the energy that they're using and become more energy efficient buildings.
Okay, so I hear the conversation about energy efficiency, but I just want to push into the motivations a little bit more. I'm not a journalist, but I do work at a media company, so I'm going to pretend to be a journalist. Why are customers actually doing this? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, but when you are folks that are out helping customers understand what this means and how to take action, what do you think is really motivating them? Is it something because the board said we're doing it? Is it cost reduction? Is it an investment in the future? Is it something else? Aaron, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I think we've seen it evolve over time. I think it started with businesses that understood that there was not only a responsibility to address it, but also that it's a good proxy for financial stewardship, right? They can save money, and a lot of the conversation used to be around, and I think a lot of the business case justification that we were making earlier in my career was around you reduce your energy use, you save money, it is a controllable cost, and it can save a lot of money. I think over time that has evolved into a bit more risk and compliance. So there are a lot of, there's obviously a lot of push, a lot of, stakeholders are really pushing for folks to address this now, and that's coming through in the way of policy and initiatives, and so now you have a different set. And you also have ratings and ranking systems, and so it's helping investors understand how different businesses are handling things in terms of decarbonization, ESG, those things more broadly. And so it's kind of where the money is driving business as well.
I want to get the other two in, but I just want another follow-up question. You mentioned investors. How would you compare the impetus or the pressure from investors versus, let's say, cost reductions from building owners or tenants?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to it just from how I've seen it in my career. It's gotten a little bit easier to get more businesses to move towards this. Helping people understand that there is a savings took time for people to see, and then once an organization was seeing those savings, more projects could just flow from that because they saw it, they bought in, it was proven, so it took time to build to that. Versus the investor influence and those types of things, I think we've just seen exponential growth because of that. We have way more clients than we ever used to have, and they're just coming towards us for those reasons. My investors are asking for this is usually now the starting question versus I see the opportunity.
Okay. How about you, Natalie? What are you seeing from customers you interact with? What's motivating them?
I think with a lot of our new customers, they're coming to us and realizing it's almost economically irresponsible not to go down the solar path. Like if you take a lot of our industrial clients, for example, a lot of our clients in key states have the ability to now rent out their rooftop to projects that we call community solar, where they can host a huge solar array that's going to feed into the grid and directly benefit local community solar subscribers around them. And they're able to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in extra rooftop rent because of that per year. So obviously they have ESG goals, they have solar goals, but they're really coming to us and realizing that they're missing out by not doing solar in terms of adding extra NOI to each property. So that really seems to be what's driving them to us.
Okay. Arif, anything you
So maybe I'll answer it in a little different way. So maybe I'll ask this question to the audience, like how many engineers do we have here? Okay. I'm an engineer too, and I blame us a little bit about our inability to communicate clearly to our customers in terms of the value of why they need to do these certain things. I think that's changing. I think we're seeing that. There's a lot of focus around this. But I think that's part of it. And I kind of break it down into two types of facilities, right? You start looking at brand new facilities that are still happening today. You're also looking at existing facilities that need to be taken care of. When you look at the existing facilities, what you find out is the fact that you have a lot of systems that have had their useful life, right? So one of the motivation is not even at times around the fact that it's money or any other motivation. It's just the fact that they can't operate their facilities, and they have to do something in terms of upgrading these facilities. And the technology is available to be able to make those decisions, to put those type of systems in there that are much more better in terms of the emissions, in terms of the environment. So I think we're seeing a lot of that happening, and I think now the engineering community understands that and is able to provide those financial detail information around why they need to be doing this, why they need to make a decision around whether I spend $1,000 or $1,200, right? And why it's a much better decision to spend $1,200 to be able to do this. The second piece of this is around new buildings, right? New facilities that are being designed. This is a great opportunity to do it right the first time. Right? And again, the technology is there. We have designed one of the first, I think the first net zero facility for a school in the US. And it's amazing that when we priced out the project and the way the design worked, because you have to have more of a holistic design in terms of how you do it, there was not much of a cost differential. So why would a customer not move forward with a high-performing, highly energy-efficient building? It's because we as engineers were able to explain to them the value of this as we move forward. The other piece of this also important, we talk about the new buildings, is they have to also, they're kind of living, breathing systems. And they have to run efficiently and at optimal level on a continuous basis. And I think that's the other change we're seeing too, a lot more of it in terms of the technology that's available. And I know you guys all heard this, right? Everybody's talking about AI, so we got to bring up AI again. But the fact of the matter is that there is technology available right now to be able to continuously monitor and tweak these systems on an ongoing basis to ensure they're running perfectly. That has a big impact in terms of ensuring that you reduce your demand of energy.
You mentioned the word upgrades. We're in Manhattan. We're in a relatively new building. Some of the most famous buildings in Manhattan are over a century old. I'm an engineer too. Sometimes engineers get a little excited about building new things. Is this really about new builds? Is this about retrofits? Is it about something different? What do you think? Aaron, you want to start?
Well, at first I think it's about all the buildings, right? But most of our inventory is existing buildings. And so a lot of the clients we work with it's about improving the efficiency of their existing buildings and converting to different fuel types. And so, yeah, that's where we focus. And I think there's this myth that older buildings can't become more energy efficient, and it's not true, right? Right here in New York, we've got the Empire State Building, which is an Energy Star certified building. So there's tons of opportunity, and that's where we're going to see more of our decarbonization happen, is going to be in the existing built environment.
What about heritage buildings? Beautiful older stone or wood buildings. It's applicable here in older cities. I'm from an oldish city, Toronto. That's always a big conversation. Europe, especially, some of the really, really older parts of the world. Does this work there, or is that more like don't touch it? It's like a museum. Like, can we decarbonize those? And is that even a big part of the problem, or is that a tiny slice of the market?
I would venture to say it's probably a smaller piece of the market, but it doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities. I think how we approach these with our client, right, depending on, there's a lot of things you have to take into account depending on what the type of building is, who are the users of that building, and being respectful to that group. And so you should focus on the things that you can do. I think Arif was alluding to this earlier. This is a complex issue. There's a lot of things that you can do, but tackling the ones that maybe you'll have the least resistance, right? I think we have to be respectful when it comes to heritage buildings. There's certain things you can't touch, you can't improve, but that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities there as well.
And sometimes I think there's even more opportunities there, right? Because part of it is these systems were designed in a way that, we see a lot of these heritage buildings that use pneumatic systems, they're still there, right? And they haven't moved into direct digital controls or those type of technologies out there, and that's easy to do. So you don't need to destroy the building or its historic piece of it. You're actually able to improve the efficiency of it. And I keep going back to, we use this term stackable solutions, like you don't have to do everything, right? If you can make those incremental changes and start there, that's the catalyst you need to move to the next level.
Okay. Natalie, I want to ask you about barriers in a minute, but first we're going to get a little bit technical. Not like engineering technical, but I just want to come back to, they're making a face because I promised I wouldn't get into like deep technology because that's not what we're focused on here. The Inflation Reduction Act. You talked about it a little bit earlier, Arif, but I think you're in a good position to speak to this. Just at really high level, make sure everybody's on the same page. What is this? Why is this a big deal? And how is this starting to move this sector?
Well, I think there's a few things going on, right? I mean, as I mentioned before, is you've got the Job Act, the IIJA, that has a big impact. You've got the IRA.
What is IRA?
So IRA is really the Inflation Reduction Act, and that's really focused on the fact that what can we do in terms of, to some level, it's really around the fact that how do we make this a much more energy efficient economy as we move forward. There's a lot of benefits to it, not only because of the fact that you're able to some level, discount the projects in terms of the cost of those projects, and you're also able to do a lot in terms of technology. But it's a very broad, program. So it doesn't just cover commercial buildings. It covers innovation. It covers EVs. It covers your home, right? If you want to be able to replace your refrigerator, or if you want to be able to upgrade with higher energy, there is actually rebates around that. So it's a very broad type of a program, and I think we're already seeing the impact of it. There's challenges with it right now. We're seeing that it's a little slow to move the dollars out into the marketplace. We're seeing the fact that you have to have the agencies really put together the detailed framework in terms of how the money is going to move. Department of Energy is probably a little ahead of the game. Treasury's kind of working on this in terms of what that whole program looks. But once it's open, we do think that coming into the first quarter of 2024, you're going to see a much bigger impact on these type of projects, because what's happening with this is a lot of projects that were financially not being able to be penciled, you can actually pencil them now. They make financial sense, they make business sense to move forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
to speak to like the solar industry specifically, it's already been a game changer this year in 2023. There are a few things that have started to expedite how we're doing projects. The first is that the ITC, the investment tax credit, is now set at 30% for the next 10 years. And I can't state what 30% of policy certainty can do for an industry. We've seen companies double in headcount. We've seen projects explode in terms of how quickly they're getting built. Tons of hiring, lots of new capital deployed. So those 10 years of certainty have been incredible for us. But the other thing that's been super interesting, especially for the real estate industry, is now in the IRA, there's a new transferability provision for the investment tax credit. So for us specifically, for Black Bear, a lot of our clients are REITs. They have a unique tax structure that makes it difficult, if not impossible, to take advantage of the ITC in the past. What that's meant for us is that in the past, 90–95% of all of our projects have actually been third-party owned. Most of our clients never actually owned solar. Now that they're able to take advantage of that 30% ITC and basically sell it with the new transferability provision and get all that cash back, clients are coming to us for the very first time this year and asking how to own solar, asking how to kind of take on those transfers themselves. So it's been incredible for how it's transformed not only how much solar we can do, but our clients choosing to own it for the very first time instead of only doing PPAs or only doing community solar.
Really, really interesting. We're going to speak about barriers in a minute. I'm just going to underline the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, despite its somewhat counterintuitive title. Many people consider this to be the most significant piece of climate-related legislation to date. And it's also an interesting study in how, in this country, the federal government can interact with the private sector and various forms of spending that the panel has. So we're Climate Week, okay? Now's the time to nerd out about this. When you're at a reception, just ask your neighbor to talk about the IRA. It's a good time for us all to really learn about this. It's going to be a spending bonanza in a good way. All right, decarbonizing the built environment. We're all convinced we're going to do it. Why is this actually difficult? I'll ask you to start, Natalie. What are some of the barriers to actually getting going that you see among your customers?
I think one of the main barriers that we see is it's overwhelming to know you want to do solar and have absolutely no idea where to start. So for a lot of our clients, they'll look at their portfolio, it'll have hundreds or thousands of sites, and they'll be, how on earth do I even get started for this? So for us, what I think Black Bear does really well is that we advise clients to ruthlessly prioritize which sites to start solar on. We help them do that by a number of factors, looking at which sites actually have room for solar, whether viable rooftops or parking spaces, helping them identify which states have the highest cost of electricity, so where solar is going to pencil the best. But also kind of talking about public policy again, knowing which states and which utilities actually have the best programs for them. Again, for our industrial clients, a lot of them are interested in community solar, but they can only do that in states where community solar legislation has been passed. So for Black Bear, we really try to help clients take a list of 500 sites and say, don't get overwhelmed. These are the best 10 or 15 to start. And I think that makes the process of doing solar a lot easier for them.
Erin, same question. What are you seeing? What's making it difficult for people to get started?
Yeah, I think on the surface it feels like a complex issue with where do we start? And so our clients, they own the buildings, and so it can be a wide range of things, of which solar is part of it. It really does depend on what kind of owner you are and how big your portfolio is and what kind of buildings that you own. I would say, in a lot of these markets where we're seeing compliance requirements kind of driving the activity, you might have a person who owns just 1 or 2 buildings, and so that's a very different challenge where you may not have the resources and the technological knowledge available to you. Our clients are usually those who are owning, hundreds of portfolios or hundreds of properties across the country, and so it just becomes dynamic in terms of where there's different compliance requirements, where do I tackle, where do I prioritize. So we work with our clients to just benchmark, understand where they are, assess where they are, find out where the opportunities are, and from there help them prioritize where they might, further dig in and further focus based on a variety of factors, some of which are influenced by their stakeholders. And then help them find the solution providers, right? So if we have clients that are interested in solar, we defer them over to Black Bear Energy to help.
Okay, terrific. Arif, anything to add?
There's really 3 big areas I think we see challenges around this. One is the lighting. The other is, but I think one is the customer themselves. So we'll talk about the building owners themselves. I'll talk a little more about that. The second piece is, I think we talked a lot about this, is funding and also legislation, right? We'll talk about that. And the third piece is the expertise, right? To be able to leverage to get these things done. In terms of customers, the fact of the matter is a lot of customers at times are looking at short-term gains, right? Which is very, very tough to do in these type of long-term decision making. So that's, I think, a big barrier is how do we convince them that it's not purely, even though financial is a big impact, it's not about just the financial paybacks that you're looking for. The second piece of this in terms of funding is the fact is, as we're seeing right now, if interest rates have an impact, if the interest rates go up, the type of projects go down. That's an issue in terms of what you can do. So clearly, with legislation, with some of the support that we're getting, you could try to break that barrier down. The third piece is expertise. This is going to be a big challenge, I think, for the country as a whole as we move forward. We have a big challenge around that. We're lucky enough, we have 5,000 experts in our organization, right? We have experts around sustainability advisory. We have 1,000 energy engineers that help our clients every day. And the other piece of this we run into is craftspeople. These are the people who actually do the work. We sometimes forget about that. I keep calling it you need the brains and the brawn to really make an impact on this thing. And the fact of the matter is these craftspeople are critical. You need the welders, and you need the electricians, you need the plumbers to be able to do it. So I think those are the 3 biggest barriers. And I think we're all working to try to break those barriers down and really have an impact in terms of reducing greenhouse gases.
Okay, thank you. We are almost done. We're in the lightning round. Think about 2 words. Same question to each of you, 3 max. What advice for building owners and operators as sort of a closing thought? What's a pithy statement you might share with somebody? If you have something in mind, just blurt it out.
Yeah, I can go first. My main advice would be to make sure that your leadership team and executive management is on board with solar. For Black Bear, our most successful clients are not necessarily those that have the biggest portfolios or the portfolios in the best states. It's the clients where the leadership has clearly communicated to everyone below them that solar is a priority and we're going to get it built.
Okay.
I think if you have that communication internally, you're going to see a lot more happen than if you didn't.
Erin?
I'll take the 3-word challenge. Understand your stakeholder priorities, maybe 4.
Arif?
I think it's boiler room to the boardroom. So I think that it's really around the fact that the impact you have in the boiler room should also somehow filter into the boardroom. If you can't do that, those big decisions are not made.
Thank you very much. These folks are the experts. Mob them afterward about how to decarbonize the built environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Thanks.